And that brings us to Matthew 2 and the fulfillment of Micah chapter 5, verse 2. The wise men came from the east. We also call them Magi. They traveled many, many miles to find a human being. You know, I get it. That sounds utterly simple. And yet it is significant. As they arrived in Jerusalem, they asked, "Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him." Their quest wasn't just to find a boy. They were looking for the Messiah, the light of the world, the hope of all humanity. And Herod the Great asked Israel's religious scholars where the Messiah would be born. Did they reply, "Oh, King Herod, the scripture doesn't mean that the Messiah will actually be a literal human being"? You know, passages on the Messiah actually refer to God's spiritual work in the hearts of people, not to a coming of a literal king. You're the king here, Herod. Don't worry about these so-called wise men. They don't know what they're talking about. We believe that God will eventually conquer our enemies and will reign in our hearts forever. Did they say anything even remotely close to that? No, not at all. These first century scholars understood that the messianic prophecies referred to the coming God-man Messiah who would establish God's kingdom. They knew he would sit upon David's throne as a descendant of Israel's great king. They were looking for a person. They were looking for the God-man Messiah. And based on Micah 5:2, they knew where the Messiah would be born. So when Herod asked where the Messiah would be born, they quickly answered by quoting Micah 5:2 and directed attention to Bethlehem, Judea. And so the wise men acted upon this Bible prophecy and traveled less than 10 miles from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, Judea. And guess what they discovered? Matthew 2, verse 11, the first part of the verse says, "And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshiped him." God literally fulfilled his Old Testament promises of the Messiah in Jesus. It was not a spiritual fulfillment. So why do I stress that so much? Because God's end times prophecies will be fulfilled just as literally as Jesus fulfilled the messianic prophecies. We shouldn't spiritualize them, but should expect them to be fulfilled just as God said. We can take God at His word.